Hey, I'm Vince Beasy, the host of Early Wins. And on this show, we interview startup founders to uncover their secrets to success closing their first customers. During this 3-question, 10-minute episode, you'll gain insights and lessons to help you land deals, find market fit, and chart your path to scalable success. I'm super excited to introduce our guest on this episode, Cameron Long, the co-founder of Verninka. Did I pronounce that right, Cam?
Vernica.
Ver- I even phonetically thought I wrote it down correctly. I'm sure I'm not the first person to mispronounce
Nope.
the company name.
Nope. You won't be the last either.
Well, Cam, welcome to the show. Obviously, this is a micro podcast. We like to get to meaningful kind of suggestions, advice, for other founders, co-founders, and VCs out there. So my first question for you is, can you think of a meaningful first customer deal that you guys did and give us a little detail around that first customer win?
Sure, I could do that. I will say there's a prerequisite for my answer to number one. And the prerequisite to number one is that you have to be networking all the time. It needs to be like common practice for you. And the reason that I was able to close some of these first customers, and the answer I'm going to give in just a second, is because I had developed this network over time. And if that's not something that's common for you to do, you just have to start doing it. And you don't have to have a reason to do it. It will become apparent in the future why, because that will be what sort of helps you with these first couple of wins when you're at the ideation stage or you don't have a product yet or something like that. So with that said, the first one I did was a and Vernica sells AI agent software to restaurants.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
we're a very early company. And the first one I closed was a 5-unit restaurant, and the owner lives locally in Raleigh. It's actually one of my first mentor professionally. It's one of his like favorite customers that he ever had, and became sort of one of my friends. And I've been developing a relationship with him for years with no like agenda, right? It was just like talking to him, getting to know his business, and that was really important because eventually you just shoot your shot when you have an opportunity and things might line up. And so I didn't know this was going to happen. And when you're at the ideation stage and you don't have a product yet, you just have an idea, the person's betting on the jockey, not the horse. And so Matt knew me, and he put his money like towards his belief in me as a person. And the product has changed 3 times since I pitched him on it. And he became an investor and a developmental partner, which means he put in money, like, period. And then he also prepaid to become a partner before we had a product in exchange for a discount. So he helps us sort of with the direction of the product, right? Because he's a professional and he, has 5 units, lots of good testing. And so that was paramount, for, working this thing out and having that first person in line to sort of help you, get the other folks online.
Yeah.
Once
So,
you have one, you
your
sort of have,
first win was more like you chose him. Like you chose your first customer
yeah,
because you built that relationship, that trust, and obviously squarely in your ICP. Clearly, they're not going to
yeah,
sign up if they're not finding
yeah,
your solution
yeah.
as useful. So, good advice for other founders out there. So, now as you're continuing through your journey of your early stage startup here, what are some mistakes or challenges you're finding through closing these first few deals, and how are you overcoming those challenges today?
People need to be, well, I use the word sold. People, they need to be approached and pitched differently depending on who they are, what the prerogatives are. And if I go to a random restaurant owner and I try to pitch them the way that I pitched my first ever customer, it's not going to work. Some of them don't speak founder language. Like the guy that I was talking with that owns the 5-unit chain, he is like he's a brilliant guy, right? And he's made investments in other verticals. So if you get someone and they just need to hear your value prop and decide if the price is okay for them, that's the way that they need to be sold. That's fine. But you got to take the blinders off as a founder and realize that not everyone speaks your language, and you don't want to oversell. Sometimes you just need to give them value prop. And if they say yes, great. If they say no, whatever. But it's realizing that there's different archetypes in selling, and you sell, you need to get some background and then sell appropriately so that you increase your chances of conversion.
I think you make a great point, though, is that we get caught up in our own jargon and we think everybody else understands our jargon or our marketing messages, and that you need to
Oh, yeah.
break it down. And first, fundamentally, do you understand my value proposition? Yes or no? And does that make sense? And should we move on the conversation? So I
Yep.
think that's really good advice because we do in anything we sell, right? We believe our own BS sometimes.
You gotta be okay with making mistakes too. Like I learned from that mistake.
Yeah.
It's kind
Well, you're
of
right. I mean, personalizing, right? It can't be the same for everybody, right? Everyone's a different persona, a different person. So you got to
yeah,
change it up a little bit and do your
yeah,
homework.
for sure.
Gosh, this is a little bit more challenging of a question. So I'll let it sink in a little bit. But like, I like that the tail end of this thing to really just, hey, what's one piece of advice if you had to give founders out there today of what they should be doing as they're trying to close their first deals and maybe even transition from founder led sales to sales led sales, if that makes sense?
So what I would say is before you start building your product, you should be doing customer discovery. So unbiased insights methodology, the mom test, that sort of thing. You want to talk to your future potential customers and ask them what their actual problems are so that you're building something appropriate for their needs. Not building what you think is appropriate for their needs, but what they tell you is. And it's very easy to accidentally try to sell them on your idea. But in my experience, the best thing to do is have a huge round of customer discovery where you're meeting with them, you're asking them what their problems are, you're getting the most technical, or not technical, but the average biggest problem in their sphere, building a product for that. And then you go back in the future
Yeah.
and you say, hey, you influenced what we built. And then you're selling them in the future. It's easy to try to sell them early when you because it feels like you should as a salesperson, but you don't. And those are the people that when you don't ask them to make a sale, they give you like this real data. And then in the future, you say, hey, how do you feel about being a developmental partner? Like that's another way of networking, in my opinion. So that's what I would say do is real, legitimate customer discovery with unbiased insights and methodology. And then in the future, once you've built, they've told you exactly what their problems are. And then if you go to them and say, "Hey, I have built something that fixes the problems that you told me you had," then it becomes a real conversation. It's a
We're
very,
talking
very warm
about
signal.
here what you're helping these founders out there is like, don't create a product in a bubble. Go out there, do your research, and find problem market fit. Like, surveys, interviews, whatever it is, do
We
as
did
many of
interviews.
those as
Yep,
possible, right?
yep. We did, I don't know, 25 or 30, and it got around. Like people were like, "Are you interviewing me about the?" And we were doing it in stealth. Like we were like, "I'm not telling you what we're building first, right? I'm just asking your opinion about your problems, the top two or three problems that you face, and why." And then, like a few months later, we're like, hey, this is what we're building. Are you interested in learning more? Like, we were really struck by your insights. And like, for I think maybe five or six of those, we asked them to be developmental partners. So that's like, hey, you have some influence in the trajectory of the product. And people like that. So that's what I would say is don't sell too quickly and too early. You want to ask questions early and then sell.
Cam, sage advice to other founders. Appreciate you coming on Early Wins.
Yep. I appreciate that. Vince, it's great to see you.